My parents gave the SUV. Grandma gifted me to my sister. Grandma's response left everyone speechless. And no, I'm not being dramatic. The title of my own story sounds unhinged even to me. How do you hand over someone else's property like it's yours to give? How do you look your kid in the eye, shrug, and say, "We thought it was fair"? How does a family implode over a car, and then implode again, harder, when grandma finds out? I'm Oleander, 26, male. I work in HVAC installation. I drove a 2021 Kia Telluride that my grandmother gifted to me personally after I helped care for her during a brutal 6-month recovery from a hip replacement. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you this because context matters when the people who were supposed to love you most decide that what belongs to you actually belongs to whoever they like better that week. Let me back up. My grandmother is 79 years old and sharper than anyone I've ever met. She ran her own alterations shop in Ohio for 31 years, raised 4 kids mostly on her own after my grandfather passed, and she does not, I want to make this crystal clear, she does not do anything by accident. When she gifted me that SUV in March of last year, she didn't hand me a bow and a set of keys at a birthday party. She called me into her kitchen, sat me down with coffee, and slid a manila envelope across the table. "Title's already transferred," she said. "In your name. I already handled the DMV paperwork. There's nothing anyone can do about it." I remember thinking that was an odd thing to say. There's nothing anyone can do about it. Like she was anticipating something. I laughed it off. Said thank you. Hugged her for a long time because she'd been through so much pain that year, and I'd been the one driving her to every physical therapy appointment, picking up her medications, staying over on the nights she was scared to be alone. My parents knew about the gift. My mother called me the evening of and said, "That was really generous of her." My father said, "You earned it, son." My sister said nothing, but she was in Florida at the time, doing whatever my sister does in Florida, which mostly involves spending money she doesn't have, and calling my parents to refill the gap. The SUV was mine, free and clear, title in my name, insurance in my name, parked in my driveway. Life was fine. For about 7 months. My sister came back from Florida in October. I don't want to be unfair. She had a rough go of it down there. A relationship fell apart, a job situation collapsed, and she came back with almost nothing, staying at my parents' house and regrouping. I get it. Life happens. I felt for her. What I didn't feel for was the slow and deliberate campaign that started approximately 2 weeks after she moved back in. It started with comments, small ones. "That Telluride is really nice, Oleander. I've been thinking about getting something like that." Then slightly less small. "You know, I need a reliable car to get back on my feet. Something safe. A sedan won't cut it in winter up here." Then my mother started in. "Your sister really needs reliable transportation. You know how important it is for her to get to job interviews." I nodded. Said, "I agree, she should get a car." My mother looked at me with that specific look, the one that means, "I'm not saying what I'm actually saying, but you should be hearing it." "Well, you have that nice SUV sitting there." "It's my car, Mom." "It was gifted to you." "Right, it was gifted to me. That's what gifted means." She dropped it. For about a week. I want to describe my sister accurately and fairly because she is not a cartoon villain. She is a real person with real problems. But she is also someone who has operated her entire life under the assumption that if she needs something badly enough, the people around her are obligated to provide it. My parents built that assumption. They cultivated it. Every time she ran out of money, they covered it. Every time a decision backfired, they absorbed the damage. And for most of our lives, I was the stable one, which in family systems like ours, quietly translates to, the one we don't have to worry about, the one who can handle it, the one who doesn't need as much. That is the invisible tax of being the responsible sibling. People assume your stability is a surplus to be redistributed. My sister started working on me directly around mid-November. She asked to borrow the SUV for a weekend, and I said yes because I'm not a monster. She brought it back with a quarter tank gone and fast food wrappers in the back seat. I cleaned it up and didn't say anything. 2 weeks later, she asked again. I said no because I had plans that weekend. She went to my mother. My mother called me and asked me to just let her use it. It's not a big deal. I said no again. The temperature in the family dropped about 10 degrees. Then came Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was at my parents' house. Normal enough at first, food was good, football was on, my grandmother was there and in good spirits. But about an hour in, my father pulled me into the garage. Classic move. The garage is where the real conversations in our family happen, I guess because there are no soft surfaces to absorb the awkwardness. We need to talk about the car situation, he said. There is no car situation, I said. Your sister needs reliable transportation. She's interviewing. She's trying to rebuild. Dad, I hear you. But that's my car. Grandma gave it to me. Grandma gives things impulsively sometimes. You know how she is. I looked at him. She transferred the title, Dad. It's a legal document. It's not an impulse. He leaned against his workbench and crossed his arms. I'm not asking you to give it up permanently. I'm asking you to let your sister use it while she gets back on her feet. How long? He shrugged. 6 months, maybe. And I drive what? You can use your mother's Camry. She barely drives it. I stood there and looked at my father, a man I have genuinely respected for most of my life, and tried to figure out what universe I had walked into where this was a reasonable conversation to be having. I said no, clearly, firmly, and I walked back into the house. 3 weeks later, I came home from a job site to find the Telluride gone from my driveway. Gone. My first thought was theft. I genuinely, sincerely thought someone had stolen it. I called the police. I was halfway through reporting it when my mother called me. Oleander, don't file a report. We have the car. I stopped. What? Your father and I talked it over. We used the spare key, the one Grandma kept and gave us when you were letting us hold on to it over the summer, and we moved it to our house so your sister could use it temporarily. I didn't speak for what felt like a full minute. You took my car. We're your parents. You took my car. That is not a gray area. That is not a family discussion. You took property that belongs to me without my consent. It's a family situation. I hung up. I drove to their house in an Uber. I knocked on the door. My father answered, and before he could say a word, I said, "Give me my keys." He actually tried to close the door. I put my foot in it. Not aggressively. I just held it open and said again very quietly, "Give me my keys." My sister appeared behind him. And this is the moment I need to describe carefully, because it tells you everything you need to know about where we were as a family. She looked at me with something that wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame, it was annoyance. Like I was the problem. Like my showing up to retrieve my own vehicle was the unreasonable act in this situation. "Oleander, can you not make this a whole thing?" she said. "Where are my keys?" "You're being so selfish. I have an interview Monday." "I don't care. Where are my keys?" My mother appeared. Now all three of them were in the doorway, and for a second it felt genuinely absurd, like a scene from something you'd see online and think there's no way this is real. But it was real. I was standing on my parents' porch trying to get back my own car. My father finally went and got the keys. He handed them to me with this look of profound disappointment, like I was the one who had done something wrong. I took the keys, got in the Telluride, and drove home. That was a Friday night. By Sunday, my mother had called me 11 times. My father twice, my sister once, to tell me that she hoped I was happy with myself. I did not call any of them back. Monday morning, I called my grandmother. I want to be honest, I was not calling her to weaponize her. I was calling her because she is one of my closest people in the world, and I needed to tell someone who would actually hear me. I walked through the whole thing: the pressure campaign, Thanksgiving, the garage conversation, coming home to an empty driveway. My grandmother listened without interrupting, which is something she almost never does. When I finished, there was a long pause. "They used the spare key," she said. "Yes." Another pause. "I gave them that key so they could move the car if there was an emergency." "An emergency, Oleander, not to hand it to your sister." "I know." "And the title. You have the title." "I have everything." "Good," she said. "Don't do anything yet, let me handle this." I don't know why, but something in her voice made me feel, for the first time in weeks, like the ground was solid again. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that my grandmother had already been watching this dynamic for years. She had watched my parents quietly deprioritize me, the stable one, in favor of managing my sister's chaos. She had watched me show up for her during her hip replacement, while my parents visited twice, and my sister sent a card. She had done the math a long time ago. The car wasn't just a car to her. It was a deliberate act, a correction. And when she found out it had been taken from me, even temporarily, even under the guise of family reasoning, something in her locked into place. My grandmother called a family meeting. Not a suggestion, an actual request delivered to my parents by phone. Sunday. My house, everyone. My parents told me about it like it was a neutral event. They actually seemed to think they were going to walk in there and talk her out of being upset. They did not know what was coming. Sunday arrived. My parents, my sister, and I all showed up at my grandmother's house within about 10 minutes of each other. It was the first time I'd been in the same room as my sister since I'd retrieved the car. She didn't look at me. My grandmother sat at her kitchen table. She had a folder in front of her, which she did not open right away. She let everyone settle, let the room get quiet, and then she spoke. "I want to explain something," she said, "so there is no confusion going forward." My mother started. "Mom, I think if we could just—" "I will speak first." The room went very still. "When I gave Oleander that car," she said, "I had already transferred the title. It was a legal transfer of property. It was not a gift that could be reconsidered. It was not a loan. It was not a family asset. It became his property on the date of transfer. And what you did, taking it without his consent, was not a parenting decision. In the state of Ohio, it was theft. It doesn't matter that you're his parents. It doesn't matter that you had a spare key. You took property that did not belong to you." My father opened his mouth. "I'm not finished." He closed it. My grandmother opened the folder. Inside was a copy of a letter, which she slid to the center of the table so everyone could see it. "I've spoken to my attorney. I've also updated my estate documents this week." My mother's face changed. "Mom, I have removed the bequest that was designated for your household from my will." She said it the way you'd read off a grocery list. Calm, certain. The lake property, which was to go jointly to you and your sister's family, will now go to Oleander outright. Additionally, the savings account I had set aside as a secondary inheritance for the household, approximately $60,000, has been redirected into a trust for Oleander. The silence in that kitchen was the loudest thing I've ever heard. My sister's face went through about 6 emotions in 4 seconds. She landed on fury. "You're punishing us because of a car?" she said. My grandmother looked at her with absolute calm. "No, I'm making a decision about my own property, which I am allowed to do. Just as Oleander is allowed to make decisions about his." "This is insane," my sister said, her voice climbing. "I've been struggling. I came back with nothing. I needed help." "Then you should have asked me," my grandmother said. "I would have helped you. I would have found a way. But you went behind your brother's back with your parents, pressured him for weeks, and when he said no, you took what belonged to him. That is not struggle. That is entitlement." My sister pushed back from the table. "I can't believe this. You're choosing him over your own." "I'm choosing honesty over comfort," my grandmother said. "Sit down." My sister sat down. I don't know who was more shocked, her or me. But my grandmother wasn't done. Because here's what I didn't know, and what my parents especially didn't know. She had made one more move. She reached into the folder and pulled out a second document, a formal letter printed on her attorney's letterhead. "This is a cease and desist," she said, sliding it toward my parents. "My attorney drafted it. It notifies you formally that any future attempt to use the spare key, to pressure Oleander into surrendering the vehicle, or to make any claim on the property that was legally transferred to him, will result in us pursuing civil action." My father stared at the letter like it had personally offended him. "You hired a lawyer against your own kids?" "I protected my grandson," she said. "There's a difference." My mother had tears in her eyes, and I want to be fair, I think some of those tears were genuine. I think she truly believed, in whatever complicated parental logic she was operating in, that she had been doing something reasonable. I think she genuinely could not see how far over the line she had gone until it was documented on letterhead and sitting in front of her face. "We never meant for it to go this far," she said softly. "I know," my grandmother said, "but it did." The aftermath was messy in the way that real family things always are. My parents did not apologize that day, not directly, not clearly. My father said something like, "We should have handled it differently," which is the closest my father gets to an apology, and we all know it. My sister left without speaking to me. The next few weeks were cold. Group texts went quiet. The family chat that usually lit up on weekends went dark. I went to work, came home, drove my SUV, and tried to figure out how I felt about all of it. Here is what I kept coming back to. My grandmother knew. She saw it before I even felt it fully. That thing she said when she handed me the envelope. "There's nothing anyone can do about it." She was preparing for this. She had seen the dynamic in our family, saw which way it would lean, and she closed every door before anyone could walk through it. The title transfer, the attorney, the updated will. She had built a wall around what she gave me before my parents could decide it was theirs to redistribute. That's not just a grandmother defending her grandson. That's a woman who has watched families eat themselves from the inside out and decided she wasn't going to let it happen again. About 6 weeks after the meeting, my mother called me. A real call, not a text, not a forward of something else. She asked if she could take me to lunch. I said yes. We sat in a diner and she talked for a while before she got to it. She said she had been going over it in her head, and she understood now that they had crossed a line they shouldn't have crossed. She said my sister's situation had made them panic, and panicking made them reach for the nearest available solution without thinking about whether it was right. She didn't dress it up too much. She didn't make herself the victim of her own bad decision. I appreciated that. I told her I heard her. I told her I wasn't done being her son. But I also told her that something had shifted for me, that I'd spent a long time being the easy one, the low-maintenance one, the one they didn't have to worry about, and I was done quietly absorbing the costs of that role. She nodded. She looked like it landed. My father hasn't said much directly, but he's been showing up in smaller ways, calling to check in, asking about work, coming by once to help me with a project at my place. It's not an apology, but it's an effort, and I'm watching it. My sister and I are not close right now. I don't have rage toward her, not anymore. But I also don't have illusions about who she is or what she's willing to do when she wants something. That's information. I'll hold it. The Telluride is still in my driveway. I had the spare key back from my grandmother. She returned it with a note that said, "Keep this one somewhere they can't reach it." I laughed for a long time at that. My grandmother's doing well. We have lunch every other Sunday. She always asks about the car first, in this very pointed way that is absolutely her sense of humor, and every time I tell her it's fine, she nods like she's signing off on a quarterly report. She told me recently that she didn't do any of it to punish my parents. She did it because she had one chance to show me that what I do for people matters. That showing up, that sacrifice, that quiet reliability that everyone takes for granted, it should mean something. She wanted it to mean something, so she made sure it did. I think about that a lot. If you've been the stable one in your family, the one who holds it together, the one they don't worry about, the one who absorbs the costs of everyone else's chaos, you know the specific exhaustion of that role. You know the way your needs get treated as optional because you're so good at not visibly having them. This story is not a hero story. I didn't do anything incredible. I cared for my grandmother when she needed it, I said no when I should have, and I stood in my parents' doorway and asked for my own keys back. But sometimes the smallest acts of holding your ground are the ones that determine everything. And sometimes someone in your corner has already been several moves ahead. If you actually read this whole thing, first of all, respect, that was a journey. Second, hit subscribe, because if you liked watching my family implode over a Telluride, wait until you see what else they're capable of. New stories every week. Bring snacks. Now I want to hear from you. If you came home and found your car gone, taken by your own parents with their own spare key given to your sibling, what would you have done when you showed up at that door? Would you have kept your cool like I did, or would it have gone a very different direction? Drop it in the comments. And be honest,